Some people think power disappears when you tear up a piece of paper. The truth is, real authority was never written on the page in the first place. The morning sun had barely climbed above the federal courthouse when Officer Ryan Mercer pulled his patrol cruiser to the curb. Traffic rolled steadily through downtown. Pedestrians hurried toward office buildings with coffee cups in hand, and the city looked exactly as it always did. Calm, predictable, ordinary. Nothing about the scene suggested that before the hour was over, an entire police station would find itself surrounded by the United States Marshals Service because of a single decision made in less than 5 seconds. Ryan stepped out of the cruiser with the confidence that came from years of believing his instincts were rarely wrong. His uniform was crisp, his badge polished, and his posture carried the quiet certainty of someone who expected people to obey the moment he spoke. He noticed a black woman walking down the courthouse steps alone, dressed in a tailored navy suit that looked professional without drawing attention to itself. In one hand, she carried a slim leather folder. In the other rested a folded document secured with a federal seal. To everyone else, she blended into the stream of government employees beginning another workday. To Ryan, something felt out of place. "Ma'am," he called, stepping into her path. "Hold up a second." The woman stopped immediately. She neither sighed nor frowned. Instead, she met his eyes with a calm expression that revealed almost nothing. "Good morning, officer." Ryan glanced toward the document in her hand. "What's that?" "A federal warrant." He let out a short laugh. "A federal warrant?" "Yes. Mind if I see it?" Without hesitation, she extended the folded document toward him. There was no nervousness in her movements. No attempt to pull it back. No argument. She simply trusted that once he looked at it, the encounter would end. Ryan unfolded the paper. Across the top sat an official federal heading. Multiple signatures filled the bottom. A raised seal reflected the morning sunlight. He skimmed only the first few lines before shaking his head. "I've seen fake paperwork before. It isn't fake. You expect me to believe someone like you is carrying a federal warrant?" The woman remained composed. "I don't expect you to believe anything, officer. I expect you to read it." For just a brief moment, the street seemed quieter. Nearby conversations faded beneath the distant hum of traffic. Ryan looked at the document again. He never reached the middle of the first paragraph. Instead, he folded the warrant once. Then again, with a sharp motion, he ripped it cleanly down the center. The sound was surprisingly loud. Paper separated with a dry crack that echoed between the courthouse walls. Several pedestrians instinctively turned toward the noise. Ryan dropped both torn halves onto the sidewalk. "There." He dusted his hands together. "Now we're done pretending." The woman lowered her eyes to the torn pieces lying near his boots. Her expression never changed. She didn't gasp. She didn't yell. She didn't bend down to pick them up. Instead, she looked back at Ryan with a sadness that somehow felt heavier than anger. "You shouldn't have done that." Ryan folded his arms. "Shouldn't have? No. You threatening me?" "I'm warning you." Ryan gave a dismissive smile. "I don't take legal advice from strangers." "I'm not a stranger." "No." She paused for only a heartbeat before answering. "No." Behind them, the courthouse security officer stepped outside and immediately froze upon seeing the torn pages scattered across the pavement. His eyes moved from the paper to Ryan, then back to the woman. He quietly reached for the radio clipped to his shoulder. Ryan noticed the movement. "What?" The security officer hesitated. "Nothing, officer." But his hand never left the radio. Vanessa Brooks watched him without speaking. The silence between them stretched just long enough for discomfort to settle into the morning air. Ryan mistook that silence for surrender. He had no idea it was restraint. He pointed toward his patrol vehicle. "You're coming with me." Vanessa nodded once. "As you wish." She neither resisted nor protested as Ryan reached for his handcuffs. The cold steel clicked around her wrists with mechanical certainty. A few people stopped walking. Others quietly lifted their phones. Still, Vanessa never looked away from Ryan. She simply watched him as though she were witnessing a decision whose consequences had already been written. Ryan opened the rear door of the cruiser. "Get in." Before stepping inside, Vanessa spoke one final sentence, her voice calm enough to disappear beneath the passing traffic. "Officer Mercer, today isn't the day that Warrant was destroyed." Ryan frowned. "What does that mean?" She held his gaze for another second. "It means the paper was never the thing protecting you. Sometimes the biggest mistake isn't putting handcuffs on the wrong person. It's believing those handcuffs make you the one in control. The rear door of the patrol cruiser closed with a heavy metallic thud. Vanessa Brooks settled quietly onto the back seat, her wrists secured in front of her. She adjusted her posture against the hard plastic bench as if she had entered a waiting room instead of the back of a police vehicle. Her breathing remained slow. Her eyes wandered briefly through the window toward the federal courthouse, growing smaller behind them. Officer Ryan Mercer slid into the driver's seat, satisfied with how easily the encounter had ended. "No resistance," he muttered as he fastened his seatbelt. "Smart choice." He started the engine and pulled into traffic. The torn pieces of the federal warrant still rested on the courthouse sidewalk, fluttering in the morning breeze long after the cruiser disappeared around the corner. Inside the courthouse entrance, Security Officer Alan Pierce finally lifted his radio. "I need a supervisor outside immediately." His voice was controlled. Only his expression revealed the urgency. Back inside the patrol car, Ryan glanced into the rearview mirror. "You've been awfully calm." Vanessa looked back at him. "I've learned that panic rarely improves a situation. You should probably be worried." "I am." Ryan smirked. "For yourself?" "No." The answer lingered in the silence that followed. Ryan dismissed it with another glance at the road. Dispatch suddenly crackled through the radio. "Unit 12, confirm one detained female transported from the federal courthouse." Ryan reached for the microphone. "Confirmed." A brief pause followed. Then another voice entered the channel. "Unit 12, courthouse security is requesting clarification regarding an incident involving federal paperwork." Ryan answered without hesitation. "Forgery investigation. Situation under control." Vanessa quietly watched the passing buildings. She never attempted to interrupt. The dispatcher responded again. "Copy. Stand by." The transmission ended. Ryan rolled his eyes. "Everyone thinks paperwork is an emergency." "Sometimes it is," Vanessa replied. He ignored her. Several miles away, Security Officer Pierce had already escorted 2 federal employees to the exact spot where the warrant had been destroyed. One of them crouched to collect every torn fragment from the pavement. Neither spoke. The only sound came from camera shutters documenting the scene before the pieces were carefully sealed into an evidence envelope. Back inside the cruiser, another radio call interrupted the drive. "Unit 12. Ryan pressed the microphone. "Go ahead. Supervisor requests you remain available before processing the arrest." Ryan frowned. "For what?" "We've received additional questions regarding the document." Ryan looked into the mirror again. Vanessa's expression hadn't changed. She simply waited. Ryan pressed the transmit button. "Negative. Prisoner transport is already in progress." "Unit 12, supervisor advises." Ryan released the button before the sentence finished. The radio fell silent. He turned the volume lower. "I don't need people who've never left a desk telling me how to do my job." Vanessa finally spoke again. "They're trying to help you. They're too late for that." Outside, downtown traffic thickened as commuters filled the streets. No sirens followed them. No black SUVs appeared in the mirrors. Everything looked completely ordinary. That illusion lasted only a few more minutes. Inside the communications center, a dispatcher entered the reference number recovered from courthouse security into a restricted federal database. Instead of returning a routine record, the screen froze. A red access banner appeared. The keyboard locked. Every available terminal automatically redirected to the same alert. The dispatcher stared without speaking. A supervisor walked over. "What happened?" I only entered the document number." The supervisor's face slowly lost its color. Without another word, he reached for the emergency phone that connected directly to command staff. At that exact moment, Officer Ryan Mercer continued driving toward the station, completely unaware that he was no longer transporting an ordinary prisoner. He was driving straight into the center of a mistake that had already begun spreading far beyond his department. The most dangerous alarms are the ones no one expects to hear. They don't ring loudly. They simply appear on the wrong screen. Officer Ryan Mercer turned into the station parking lot with the confidence of someone finishing another routine arrest. The patrol cruiser rolled to a stop beneath the afternoon sun, its engine idling for a moment before he shut it off. He stepped out, adjusted his duty belt, and opened the rear door. Vanessa Brooks climbed out without hesitation. No complaint, no resistance, no fear. She simply stood there, her wrists still restrained, observing the brick building in front of her as though she had been there before. Ryan noticed her calm expression and chuckled. "Still think this is going to end well for you?" Vanessa met his eyes. "I think it's already begun." He laughed under his breath. "You really don't know when to quit." Inside the station, the morning rhythm continued as officers answered phones, detectives carried case files through narrow hallways, and dispatchers monitored the steady flow of emergency calls. Everything felt normal, until dispatcher Emily Carter looked up from her terminal. The restricted federal inquiry she had entered moments earlier had not disappeared. Instead, the alert had expanded across a second monitor. A flashing message appeared. "Federal access restricted. Do not modify related evidence." Emily frowned. She had never seen that notification before. "Lieutenant." Her supervisor, Mark Ellis, walked over. "What is it?" She pointed silently at the screen. Mark read every line. His expression hardened. "Where did this number come from?" "Court security recovered it from paperwork destroyed during an arrest." "Destroyed?" Emily nodded. "Officer Mercer reported it as suspected forgery." Mark looked back at the monitor. Nothing about the alert suggested forgery. It suggested something far more serious. Without speaking, he picked up the secure phone reserved for interagency communications. The line connected immediately. Across town, Ryan escorted Vanessa through the station entrance. Conversations slowed. Several officers glanced toward the woman in handcuffs before returning to their paperwork. To them, she looked like another detainee. Vanessa remained silent as Ryan guided her toward the booking desk. The booking officer reached for the standard intake form. "Name: Vanessa Brooks. Date of birth." She answered calmly. Ryan leaned against the counter with folded arms. "See? Easy." Vanessa offered no response. At that same moment, Lieutenant Ellis listened carefully as the federal communications officer on the secure line asked only one question. "Was the original document physically damaged?" Ellis swallowed. "Yes." The line became silent. Not disconnected. Silent. Then came the reply. "Preserve every available recording immediately." Ellis blinked. "I'm sorry. Body camera footage. Station surveillance. Radio traffic. Dispatch logs. Nothing is to be deleted." His pulse quickened. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Another brief silence. Then, "You'll receive further instructions." The call ended. Ellis slowly lowered the receiver. He had asked for answers. Instead, he'd been given procedures. And procedures like those were never triggered over ordinary paperwork. Across the booking area, Ryan signed the arrest paperwork with a confident flourish. He slid the clipboard across the counter. "Let's get this finished." Before the booking officer could respond, the station's internal phone rang. Every conversation nearby seemed to pause for just a second. The desk sergeant answered. "Central Precinct." His expression changed almost immediately. He looked toward Ryan, then toward Vanessa. Finally, he covered the receiver with his hand. "Officer Mercer." Ryan turned casually. "The chief wants everyone to stop what they're doing." No one in the room realized it yet. But somewhere far beyond the city limits, people with federal authority had already begun moving. Real power rarely announces its arrival. It simply starts moving while everyone else still believes they're in control. Chief Michael Donovan stood in the center of his office, the secure phone still in his hand. The call had lasted less than 2 minutes, yet it had unsettled him more than any emergency briefing in his 26 years of law enforcement. The federal official had never raised his voice. He hadn't issued a threat. He had only repeated one instruction. "Do not release the detainee. Do not move her. Preserve every piece of evidence." Nothing more. Nothing less. Donovan slowly looked through the glass wall toward the booking area. Officer Ryan Mercer was leaning casually against the counter, chatting with another patrol officer as though the arrest had already become another routine story to laugh about before the end of the shift. Vanessa Brooks sat quietly on a metal bench nearby. Her hands remained cuffed. Her posture remained straight. She never once asked for a lawyer. She never demanded a phone call. She simply waited. The chief couldn't explain why that bothered him. He stepped into the hallway. "Ryan." Mercer looked over. "Chief." "My office." Ryan followed confidently, closing the door behind him. "You wanted to see me?" Donovan folded his arms. "Walk me through everything." Ryan shrugged. "Stop the suspicious woman outside the federal courthouse." "Suspicious how?" "She claimed she was carrying a federal warrant. And I checked it. You verified it? Ryan hesitated for the first time. I didn't need to. The chief stared at him. What do you mean? It looked fake. So you confirmed that. Ryan interrupted with a confident smile. I tore it up. The room became perfectly still. Donovan blinked once. You what? I destroyed it. You destroyed a document before verifying it? Ryan's confidence faltered only slightly. It was obviously fake. Obviously. Ryan nodded. I trusted my instincts. The chief turned toward the office window, saying nothing for several long seconds. Finally, he spoke. Your instincts have now triggered calls from agencies that don't normally call local police departments. Ryan frowned. They're overreacting. Before Donovan could answer, his desk phone rang again. The caller ID displayed only one word. Federal. He answered immediately. Chief Donovan. A calm voice spoke. This is Deputy United States Marshal Daniel Hayes. Donovan straightened instinctively. Yes, sir. I'm confirming that your department currently has custody of Ms. Vanessa Brooks. Yes. Is she safe? Donovan looked through the glass. Yes. Good. Another brief pause followed. We are en route. The chief swallowed. May I ask what this concerns? You may, but I can't answer. When will you arrive? Soon. The line disconnected. No explanation. No accusation. Just certainty. Outside the office, the atmosphere inside the station slowly began to change. Dispatchers whispered. Supervisors walked faster than usual. Computer terminals displayed restricted notifications that officers had never seen before. Someone quietly began copying body camera footage onto secure storage. Someone else locked the evidence room. Ryan stepped back into the hallway. So what did they say? Donovan looked directly at him. They're coming. Who? The U.S. Marshals. Ryan forced a laugh. For her. I don't know. But I do know this. The chief's voice grew quieter. I've never seen federal officers mobilize this quickly over a piece of paper. Across the room, Vanessa lifted her eyes toward the front entrance. For the first time since her arrest, the faintest hint of emotion crossed her face. It wasn't relief. It wasn't satisfaction. It was recognition. Somewhere beyond the station walls, a convoy of black SUVs had already entered the city. And with every mile they traveled, the balance of power shifted a little further away from the man who believed he had destroyed it with his own hands. People often imagine justice arriving with sirens and shouting. In reality, it usually arrives in silence, while everyone else is still pretending nothing has changed. The atmosphere inside Central Precinct had become strangely quiet. No one had ordered the officers to lower their voices. No one had announced an emergency. Yet conversations had shortened into whispers. Footsteps echoed more sharply across the tiled floor, and every few minutes another supervisor glanced toward the station's front entrance as if expecting someone to walk through it at any second. Officer Ryan Mercer noticed the tension but interpreted it differently. They're making a big deal out of nothing, he said to the booking officer. By tomorrow, nobody will even remember this. The booking officer forced a polite smile. He wasn't so sure. Across the room, Vanessa Brooks remained seated on the metal bench. Her hands were still restrained. She hadn't asked for water. She hadn't asked to make a phone call. She hadn't complained once about the cuffs pressing against her wrists. Instead, she quietly watched the station around her, her eyes moving from one officer to another with calm patience. Ryan walked over. You know, this gets a lot easier if you start talking. Vanessa looked up. What would you like me to say? The truth. A faint smile crossed her face. I've been telling the truth since you stopped me. Ryan leaned closer. No, you've been hiding something. Vanessa answered almost gently. There's a difference between hiding the truth and waiting for the right people to hear it. Before Ryan could reply, the front desk phone rang again. The desk sergeant answered, listened for several seconds, then immediately stood. His chair rolled backward across the floor. He turned toward Chief Donovan. They're 5 minutes out. Every conversation stopped. No one asked who they were. Everyone already knew. Chief Donovan nodded once. Everyone stay where you are. He looked directly at Ryan. No one moves Ms. Brooks. Ryan frowned. This is getting ridiculous. The chief didn't respond. Instead, he walked toward the evidence room himself. One by one, officers began securing body camera memory cards. Dispatch supervisors exported radio logs. Digital surveillance footage was copied onto encrypted drives. The station wasn't preparing for visitors. It was preserving history. Ryan watched the unusual activity with growing irritation. "What are we doing?" A veteran detective quietly answered without looking up. "When federal agencies tell you to preserve everything." He paused. "You preserve everything." Outside, dark clouds drifted across the afternoon sky, dimming the sunlight that poured through the station windows. Then someone standing near the lobby whispered, "They're here." Every head turned. Through the glass entrance, several black SUVs rolled slowly into the parking lot with deliberate precision. No lights flashed. No sirens sounded. Each vehicle stopped in perfect formation. The engines remained running. For several long seconds, no one stepped out. The silence felt heavier than any command. Ryan folded his arms. "So that's the big emergency?" No one answered. Then the driver's door of the lead SUV opened. A man in a dark suit stepped onto the pavement. His movements were calm, measured. Behind him, several more federal officers exited the remaining vehicles in disciplined formation. No one hurried. No one spoke. They simply walked toward the station entrance with quiet confidence that needed no introduction. Inside, Vanessa slowly rose to her feet. For the first time all day, she took a deep breath. Not because she was relieved, because she knew the waiting was finally over. As Deputy U.S. Marshal Daniel Hayes reached for the station door, Officer Ryan Mercer still believed he was about to explain a misunderstanding. He had no idea that, within the next few minutes, he would discover the warrant had never been the most important thing he had destroyed. Authority is never measured by the volume of a voice. It's measured by how many people become silent when one person enters the room. The glass doors of Central Precinct swung open. Deputy U.S. Marshal Daniel Hayes stepped inside first. He wore a dark suit instead of a tactical vest, his gold credentials clipped neatly to his belt. Behind him, 6 deputy marshals entered in disciplined formation, each moving with calm precision. No one reached for a weapon. No one raised a voice. They didn't need to. The room had already fallen completely silent. Chief Michael Donovan walked forward immediately. "Deputy Marshal Hayes." Hayes offered a brief nod. "Chief." His eyes swept across the booking area in a single measured glance. He noticed the evidence lockers, the dispatch room, Officer Ryan Mercer. Then his gaze stopped on Vanessa Brooks. Still seated, still handcuffed. His expression changed almost imperceptibly, not with anger, with disappointment. He walked directly toward her. Every officer instinctively stepped aside. Ryan frowned. "Excuse me, she's my detainee." Hayes didn't even look at him. He stopped in front of Vanessa. "Ms. Brooks." She stood. "Deputy, I'm sorry you had to wait." "It's all right." "No." Hayes' voice remained calm. "It isn't." Without another word, he removed a small key from his pocket. The metallic click echoed through the station as Vanessa's handcuffs opened. The red marks around her wrists remained where the steel had pressed into her skin. Hayes noticed them. His jaw tightened for only a second. "You are free to go." Vanessa gently rubbed one wrist before lowering her hands. "Thank you." Ryan stepped forward. "Hold on." Everyone turned toward him. "You can't just walk in here and release someone without explaining what's going on." Hayes slowly faced the officer. "You are Officer Ryan Mercer?" "Yeah." "You detained Ms. Brooks?" "I did." "You destroyed a federal document?" Ryan folded his arms. "It was fake." Hayes studied him quietly. "What made you reach that conclusion?" Ryan hesitated. "My experience." "No laboratory examination?" "No." "No verification with the issuing agency?" "No." "No attempt to contact federal authorities?" Ryan's confidence began to fade. "I didn't think I needed to." Hayes nodded once. "I see." He reached into a leather portfolio and removed another document. Unlike the first one, this copy remained perfectly intact. The same federal seal, the same signatures, the same reference number. Hayes held it where everyone could see. "This is the certified duplicate of the warrant you destroyed." Ryan stared at it. His face slowly lost its color. You believed tearing one copy apart would eliminate its authority." Hayes calmly folded the document and returned it to the portfolio. It did not. The station remained silent. No one shifted. No one whispered. Even the phone seemed to stop ringing. Chief Donovan looked from the duplicate warrant to Ryan, realizing that every warning, every restricted alert, every urgent phone call had been triggered by the very document his officer had dismissed without reading. Hayes finally looked back toward Vanessa. "Your transportation is waiting." She nodded. Before turning toward the exit, She paused beside Ryan. She didn't smile. She didn't accuse him. She simply said, in the same calm voice she had used since the beginning, "I told you the paper wasn't the thing protecting you." Then she walked toward the front doors. For the first time that day, Officer Ryan Mercer understood what she had meant. The warrant had never been her source of authority. It had only been the first thing he failed to recognize. Truth has a peculiar way of revealing itself. It doesn't shout to be believed. It simply asks everyone to keep watching. Vanessa Brooks walked through the station lobby beside Deputy U.S. Marshal Daniel Hayes. The deputies followed a respectful distance behind. No one escorted her anymore. No one held her arm. The woman who had entered the building in handcuffs was now leaving as every officer instinctively stepped aside. Chief Michael Donovan watched in silence. Officer Ryan Mercer could only stare. His certainty had vanished. "What is she?" he finally asked. Hayes stopped just before reaching the exit. He turned slowly. "That's the wrong question." Ryan frowned. "Then what's the right one?" Hayes held his gaze. "The right question is why you believed you could destroy a federal document without first learning who carried it." Ryan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Hayes continued. "Your investigation began with an assumption. It ended before you ever looked for evidence." The words settled heavily across the room. No one argued. The deputy marshal reached into his portfolio one final time. This time it wasn't another warrant. It was a sealed federal authorization packet. He handed it directly to Chief Donovan. "These documents explain Ms. Brooks' official role in the operation connected to the warrant." Donovan accepted the folder carefully. The cover page carried multiple federal agency seals. Across the bottom, bold letters read, "Authorized Federal Operation. Law Enforcement Sensitive." He looked up. "So she was," Hayes answered before he could finish, "lawfully participating in a protected federal assignment." He offered nothing further. The details clearly weren't meant for public discussion. Ryan felt his stomach tighten. Every decision replayed inside his mind. Stopping her, questioning her, ignoring courthouse personnel, tearing the warrant apart, placing her in handcuffs. Each step had seemed reasonable at the time. Now every memory felt heavier than the one before it. Chief Donovan slowly opened the first page of the packet. Several paragraphs in, he stopped reading. His expression hardened. He closed the folder immediately. He understood enough. Far more than he wished he did. He looked toward Ryan. "Turn over your badge." The room froze. Ryan blinked. "What?" Immediately. Silence. Ryan's hand slowly moved toward his uniform. The familiar weight of the badge suddenly felt different. Not like a symbol of authority. Like a responsibility he had failed to protect. With trembling fingers, he unclipped it and placed it into the chief's waiting hand. The metallic sound echoed across the station. No one looked away. Hayes remained expressionless. "This is only an administrative action," he said calmly. "The legal review will proceed independently." Ryan lowered his eyes. For the first time since the encounter outside the courthouse, he realized no argument could change what had already happened. No explanation could restore the trust he had lost. Vanessa paused beside the open doorway. Afternoon sunlight spilled across the station floor. She glanced back one final time. Not at the officers. Not at the badge resting in the chief's hand. At Ryan. "There was always time to ask one more question," she said quietly. "You chose certainty instead." Then she stepped outside. The federal convoy pulled away moments later, disappearing into the city without lights or sirens. Inside the station, no one spoke. Chief Donovan still held Ryan's badge. The booking desk remained exactly where it had always been. The torn warrant had been replaced. The handcuffs had been removed. But something far more important had changed forever. Everyone in that building now understood the lesson the paper had tried to teach from the very beginning. Real authority is never destroyed by tearing a document in half. Only character is. The consequences of a single decision rarely end where the decision was made. They travel quietly, reaching people who were never present to witness the moment itself. The federal convoy disappeared beyond the intersection. Inside Central Precinct, silence lingered long after the engines could no longer be heard. Chief Michael Donovan remained standing in the lobby, Ryan Mercer's badge resting in the palm of his hand. It felt heavier than metal. It felt like responsibility. Ryan still hadn't moved. His empty uniform looked unfamiliar without the shield that had rested there every day for nearly 8 years. He looked around the station. The same desks. The same officers. The same walls. Nothing had changed. Yet everything felt different. Chief Donovan finally spoke. Conference room. No one questioned the order. Within minutes, supervisors, detectives, dispatch personnel, and patrol officers filled the room. Ryan sat at the far end of the table, no longer leading the conversation, simply listening. Donovan placed the damaged evidence bag on the table. Inside were the carefully preserved fragments of the torn federal warrant. He looked around the room. Everyone in this department has now seen what assumptions can cost. No one answered. He continued. We train to recognize danger. We train to make decisions under pressure. But today we were reminded of something even more important. He rested one hand on the evidence bag. We are trained to investigate. His eyes settled briefly on Ryan. Not to assume. The room remained silent. Several officers lowered their heads. Dispatcher Emily Carter remembered the moment the restricted alert had first appeared on her screen. The booking officer remembered the marks left by the handcuffs on Vanessa's wrists. Court security had already forwarded copies of surveillance footage. The federal duplicate warrant had been logged into evidence. Every minute of the incident had become part of an official record. Nothing would disappear. Ryan finally broke the silence. I thought I was protecting the courthouse. No one interrupted him. I honestly believe the warrant was fake. Chief Donovan nodded slowly. I believe you. Ryan looked up, surprised. But believing something, the chief continued, isn't the same as proving it. The words struck harder than any accusation. Because they were true. The conference room remained quiet until Donovan closed the evidence bag. From this day forward, no federal credential, warrant, or authorization will be dismissed without verification. Heads nodded around the table. It wasn't simply a new procedure. It was a lesson purchased at a very high price. Outside, reporters had begun gathering near the station entrance after noticing the unusual federal presence earlier that afternoon. Camera crews waited behind police barriers. Questions were already spreading faster than answers. Inside, no officer was authorized to speak publicly. The investigation now belonged to people beyond the department. Ryan looked through the conference room window toward the parking lot. He could see the news vehicles arriving one after another. For years, he had believed accountability happened to other officers, other departments, other cities. Now he understood that accountability doesn't recognize uniforms. It recognizes actions. As the first television cameras pointed toward the station doors, Chief Donovan quietly locked the conference room. The investigation had only begun, and somewhere inside a federal office, another file bearing Officer Ryan Mercer's name had just been opened beside the reconstructed warrant he believed he had destroyed. Justice does not end when the handcuffs come off. Sometimes, that is simply the moment when accountability begins. 3 days passed. Central Precinct continued operating as it always had. Patrol cars answered emergency calls. Dispatch radios crackled without pause. Reports were filed. Shifts changed. To someone driving past the building, nothing appeared unusual. Inside, however, every officer knew the station had entered a different chapter. Officer Ryan Mercer had been placed on administrative leave pending multiple investigations. His locker remained closed. His patrol vehicle sat untouched in the rear parking lot. His name still appeared on the weekly duty roster, but everyone understood it would soon be removed. Chief Michael Donovan spent most of those 3 days answering requests from federal investigators. Body camera recordings, dispatch archives, security footage, training records. Every document was copied exactly as requested. No one complained. No one delayed. Trust, once questioned, demanded complete transparency. Across town, Vanessa Brooks returned to work. The federal operation connected to the warrant continued exactly as planned. Nothing in the mission had changed. Only the people involved had. One afternoon, Deputy U.S. Marshal Daniel Hayes stopped outside her office. The review board has everything. Vanessa nodded. I expected they would. Hayes looked toward the city skyline. They've asked whether you'd like to submit a personal statement. She considered the question carefully. For or against him? For the record. Vanessa remained silent for several moments. Finally, she answered, I don't want the record to describe how angry I was. Hayes waited. I wanted to describe how many opportunities he had to make a different choice. The deputy marshal gave a slight nod. I'll include that. There was no bitterness in her voice. Only clarity. Because she understood something many people never learn. Justice becomes strongest when it explains, not when it humiliates. Back at the station, Chief Donovan gathered every new academy recruit for an unexpected training session. No names were mentioned. No photographs were displayed. Only one evidence bag rested on the podium. Inside lay the reconstructed pieces of the torn federal warrant. Donovan held it high enough for every recruit to see. This, he began quietly, is not evidence of a fake document. He paused. It is evidence of what happens when confidence replaces verification. The room remained completely still. You will wear a badge. You will carry authority. But neither one gives you permission to stop asking questions. Every recruit listened. Some wrote notes. Others simply stared at the damaged paper. They weren't looking at torn pages anymore. They were looking at a lesson that would follow them throughout their careers. Later that evening, the evidence bag was returned to secure federal storage. The station lights slowly dimmed as another shift came to an end. Outside, the city moved forward without knowing how close one ordinary traffic stop had come to becoming something far worse. Inside a federal archive, the reconstructed warrant was filed alongside hundreds of other official records. Unlike most of them, however, this one carried a story that investigators would remember, not because a document had been destroyed, but because one officer had mistaken authority for certainty. And in doing so, he reminded everyone else that the strongest shield any officer can carry is not a badge. It is the discipline to seek the truth before deciding what it must be.